My grandfather, Robert T. Dunstan, was the son of a Civil War surgeon and grew up in North Carolina. And as a kid, during the 1920s and 1930s, as he was growing up, he watched the chestnut die off in the forests of North Carolina. The story behind the chestnuts is it was the most common tree in eastern North America. And in 1904, a disease from China was accidentally introduced that the American chestnut had no resistance to. And in the space of 40 years, over 30 million acres of trees were killed by this bark fungus called the chestnut blight. It's certainly the largest ecological disaster that we have ever witnessed in North America. But our generation today has forgotten about it because the chestnuts have been gone now for a long time. My grandfather became a plant breeder. He was a professor at Greensboro College in North Carolina, and he got interested in breeding plants and started out breeding grapes. And a friend of his was hunting in Ohio and found a single American chestnut tree living in a 100-acre grove of dead chestnuts. And so his friend collected cuttings from that tree, the living tree, and sent them to my grandfather. My grandfather had planted Chinese chestnuts. So the blight came from China, so Chinese chestnuts have blight resistance, but they don't have the really great nut and tree quality that the original American chestnut had. And so my grandfather grafted those cuttings from the American tree on chestnuts that he had in his yard, grew them to flowering, crossed them with Chinese chestnut, and back-crossed them back to the original American chestnut that came from the grove in Ohio. And that hybrid population he brought to Florida with him when he retired here in 1961. And when I got out of college in 1979, my dad was also a plant breeder, but he had passed away. And my grandfather, Dr. Dunstan, was my mentor. Grandpa had this grove of chestnut trees on the farm, and at that time, the U.S. imported $20 million a year of chestnuts from Europe for roasting on the open fire. And we thought we could start a new chestnut industry in the United States and with his blight-resistant trees. So we tested them, we inoculated them with blight, and they survived perfectly. And they had good tree form and excellent large-sized nuts. And so we thought this would be the basis of a chestnut orchard industry for the United States. So after college, I moved out here to the farm where we are today and built a house and started growing chestnut trees. And the biggest problem that chestnuts were having from all the orchards that we sold where the deer were eating all the harvest. I mean, guys were having to build fences around 50-acre orchards just to keep the deer out. And I was at a trade show talking to a guy about deer repellent, and he said, you know what, you need to sell to people who want deer. And that was a big aha moment. And so we had one article written from publishing from an outdoor writer and published in Bow Hunting magazine, and we sold 30,000 trees from that one article, and that was the beginning of Chestnut Hill Outdoors. And this is back about 2010 or 2011. So one of the most gratifying things out of this business, in addition to help a lot of people plant trees and improve their farms and their land, is having my sons both step into roles to run the business. Dunstan, who's named for my grandfather, and my son Iain, and they manage the nursery between them. And it's a continuation of a legacy. My grandfather taught me. My sons are now learning the business and taking it over and going to continue this legacy of chestnuts. You know, there's a lot of acreage of forest in the United States. There's a lot of room to continue to plant trees. If you counted up all the trees we've sold to date over the life of the nursery, we've covered 250,000 acres of forest with trees, which is a pretty good legacy for us to have, but there's decades ahead of us here to be able to continue to repopulate the forests with chestnuts and with other kinds of wildlife trees. And it's incredibly gratifying that my sons are going to carry this forward, because there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for the farm to be able to provide these for customers all across the United States.
So my brother and I, we grew up here on the farm, and you know, I'm 30 years old now, so we've spent a lot of time wandering around here, you know, checking out the nursery. And at the time, I don't know if I ever really thought that I would grow up and take this thing over. And it's been a great time, I think, over the last 5 or 10 years. For me, I've grown closer to the town that we live in here in Alachua in Gainesville, Florida. And I've come to just love this place. And I've come to love the farm. And over the last couple years, we've really been asking ourselves, you know, what does this place mean to us? What we've come to realize about growing and selling trees is that it's not so much about sales. It's not so much about you know, the daily operations here. It's really about that that connection that we get with people. That is super exciting for us, and we can't wait to see, you know, what the next 10, 20, 30 years comes for us and the community that's been able to buy our trees.
Growing up, living and working at Chestnut Hill Nursery was really a really unique experience, a really unique life experience. I really value the unique opportunity that we have based on the work of everyone that's come before us. There's a wealth of knowledge that's been passed down generation to generation in our family. That information needs to be in your hands, and that's the opportunity that my brother and I have today. It is Chestnut Hill Outdoors' goal to take the generations of knowledge that we have and to share that information with you. We have that ability today through blog posts, through information resources, through our learning center, through YouTube videos, through tutorials. We want to empower the next generation of outdoor enthusiasts in America to grow where they've planted and to put down roots and enjoy the outdoors the same way that we have with our family for generations.